A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most beneficial, most merciful. My name is Mohammed Solomon. You're watching Islamic Action TV, Guerrilla Minded Productions. And once again, brothers and sisters, we're bringing you the truth as it's meant to be. No censorship, no holds barred, 100% truth to liberate you, the black man and black woman in today's world. Now, brothers and sisters, today I'm excited. I'm over the moon by the grace of Almighty Allah to be with one of the real, I would say, hero in our community. A brother that has many talents. And for me to even begin to list these talents, there is not enough ink in the planet. Let's just say that. But we're here with Brother Twillight. It's an honor to be with you. I've known you for quite a while now. But to actually finally get you on the show and to get you here to, maybe kick some knowledge to the brothers and the sisters, once again, it's an honor for me. So, like I said, I can't really name what you do, apart from I know that you're an educator. So can you tell the audience, what exactly do you do, Twillight?
Well, I'm a community educator and a political activist at heart. I've done a lot of work in prisons and schools, and a lot of work in communities and neighborhoods, disadvantaged communities and neighborhoods, helping them to understand how to take responsibility for their own self-determination and challenge their condition, not give in to being second-class citizens, not give in to being cannon fodder for the prison industrial complex, and how to outmaneuver those things and actually get to a position where they can move from survival to thriving.
Well, praise the due to Allah. I mean, that in itself is a lot of things to do, and how you find the time, and how, but I suppose it's 24/7 helping our people.
Well, it is a 24/7 thing. I mean, I live this. This is what my life's work is about. And it's in essence who and what I am. And so every aspect of my life, it's been impacted and shaped by the things that I'm doing and the reason for doing it.
SubhanAllah, that's beautiful to hear. Now, you're a man of many talents, a brother who I know is on the front line every day, as you said, really helping to educate our people, showing that very strong African balance between the male principle and the female principle, the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So we know these are very important things, and particularly the youth as well. What we need to pass on to the youth, what we can hold on to, and how we can help create this future. And so we know at the moment that the world is a lot of buzz around the entertainment industry to do with this new film that's come out, straight out of Compton, which is supposed to be the concise history of the whole NWA phenomenon and gangster rap and Ice Cube, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre. And we know that in the black community, it's polarized the black community in England and in America. Some people have found this film to be inspirational. Some have said that it captures the essence of black creativity, black talent. This group was allegedly on the FBI most wanted list because, because they were saying things that perhaps could take people in a revolutionary stance, particularly coming from the area which is Los Angeles, and an area where the Black Panthers birthed the Black Panthers. So there was a lot of people in the black community, elders and scholars and academics saying, yeah, this is what we need to see. This is a positive film, positive contribution to the African black struggle. On the other hand, we had academics, professors, and particularly some black females coming out saying that they found this film to be revisionist, to be sexist, to condone violence. And many of the time, a lot of the things happened with some of the female, like Michelle A, like there was issues where she was allegedly the victim of a lot of abuse from Dre, which was airbrushed out of the movie. And many people argue that the whole term of, when we become niggers, we were black, and now we're niggers. You're Public Enemy, and you got niggers with attitude. So the idea was maybe that the corporate world, the prison industrial complex got involved. Jerry Hellier, the manager, this white Jewish manager, created this Frankenstein monster purely to destroy the black community, to create this idea that women are, excuse my language, the B word, that women are the B word. And so since then we can trace the kind of the destruction of the black family from the beginning of, say, NWA. So we can see there's so many, it's polarized on both sides. Now I know you've seen the film.
Yes.
I know you have your own take on the film. So I'd like you to share with the audience, with myself, what do you feel in terms of the different opinions? What's your opinion on the film?
I think that one of the things that we have, one of the problems we have with history is that people like to give this pretty picture. Some people like to give the elements of the ugly picture, but not the full thing. And the reality of the situation is that we have to have a full account. Now, of course, this film can't give you a full account of what gave rise to the culture and the way that it is. In fact, that's one of my critiques of the film, is that it's not enough cultural cues in the film to help people from outside our experience to understand what you're actually dealing with here. And so, you know, when you deal with history, you deal with something where you're talking about a particular culture, you cannot just take what's depicted in the film and think you understand it all. It's a whole lot more to it. And, you know, you cannot look at one aspect of African American experience and Africans' experience since the birthing of colonialism and chattel slavery without looking at that aspect too. And what I mean by that is just, you know, people should consider this. Black folks have been called niggas since slavery, since colonialism, and right up until this present day. They will continue to be called niggas until slavery, until neo-colonialism, white privilege, and institutional racism is eradicated from the planet. Because it is institutional racism, white privilege, those contexts of our reality that give validity to the term nigga. If you don't like the term nigga, you got to get rid of the construct that creates the condition. Until you get rid of the construct that creates the condition, we can do all we want to do to say, well, I'm not a nigga, I'm not this, and I'm not that, but yet be subjected to all of the same treatments and mannerisms that niggas were subjected to. Second-class citizen, police brutality, murder without cause. And these are the things that will continue to happen until you eradicate institutional structural white supremacy as well as white privilege. And that means bringing justice to the world. And if the world has no justice, then injustice gives birth to niggas.
Wow, brothers and sisters, that is so profound, because you're now looking at it in a deeper and a greater context.
Well, what you gotta understand is that when the emancipation of so-called slaves happened in the United States, it was no emancipation. I'll challenge anyone to go and look up the United States Constitution, go to the 13th Amendment, which was put there to end slavery, and you will see that it never ended slavery. It made slavery a condition of crime. So if you were convicted of, if you were duly convicted of a crime, the state can use you as a slave and put you into forced labor. It never said that slavery was illegal and stripped away. It said that slavery was not allowed within the United States in any place subject to its jurisdiction unless you've been duly convicted of a crime. So when our people walked off the plantations, a lot of them didn't have money, didn't have anywhere to go.
40 acres and a mule.
They never got the 40 acres and a mule. And the thing is that at that point, W.B. Du Bois, the government gave them money to set up the Freeman Institute. Go look it up, Google it. And the Freeman Institute was set up to help teach what was chattel slaves, not your punished type slaves, not the kind of slaves that you hear about that Africa supposedly had. These are chattel slaves. And what people understand about chattel slavery, these people had no more rights than this tavern. They were no more of importance than this table. And this is what people got to understand. And what you got to remember is that after 400 years of this, those who originally came over and who had a remembrance of Africa, 400 years down the road, there's nobody alive that remembers Africa. They were stripped of their humanity. They were stripped of their dignity. They didn't even know and understand what human decency and civilized behavior was, other than not to be treated the way that the slave master treats us. That's the only reference that you had. So when you look at that history, the Freeman Institute was built to give us back our sovereignty, to give us back our humanity. It was defunded within a year. So that never happened.
What year are we talking about?
We're going back to the 1880s, yeah?
Just after the Civil War.
Just after the Civil War, all of that. And this is what people don't understand. So when you look at who's moving and where black people are going, when people talk about East Coast rap, West Coast rap, and all of those kind of things, when you go to the East Coast, you have the oldest established so-called cities and societies in America. and what became known as the United States.
Oh.
Because in that part of the country, this is where the colonizers came. They came to the eastern seaboard first, yeah? And then they migrated down south and took over, bought Florida from Spain, bought Louisiana from the French. And they sold it all off because they felt that eventually the slaves in the United States would do what the slaves in Haiti did, rebel and kill all the white people.
Yeah, Nat Turner didn't do it.
Yeah, and Nat Turner and a few of them attempted to do that. In fact, there was the anniversary of Nat Turner's rebellion last month, as well as the Watts Rebellion last month.
And John Brown.
Yeah, all of that. So,
as well as the Watts Rebellion.
As well as
the
the
65 Watts.
Yeah, it's 50-year anniversary last month.
Wow.
So, this is the 50-year anniversary. And so when you look at all of that, and you take into consideration all of the history, the people left in the South spoke a language that didn't get a term put to it until years later called Ebonics. Now, Ebonics was African dialect with English words.
Well, okay. How does that work out? I mean, I'm interested to hear.
Well,
give us an example.
Well, it's like in certain African languages, certain terms or certain phrases will come before rather than after in a particular sentence. Whereas in the English grammar context, a certain noun or a certain pronoun will come first. But in African context, it's the reverse. So people were speaking with an African dialect, but with using English words. And this is totally separate from what was happening in the slave master's house, because Africans were educated by each other. So this is how we learned to communicate.
In the field, he's talking in the field.
In the field, right. In the field houses, this is how people will learn and communicate with each other. So slavery is over. For a few hundred years, we started to suffer people being put onto work plantations.
It's the antebellum period.
Yeah, the antebellum period, and they started putting a lot of black men onto prison. Into prison to work plantations. They came up with the Vagrancy Act.
Oh, right.
So if you were sleeping on the road, you sleeping rough, didn't have a car, didn't have a house, didn't have a place to be, then right around the time of the season for the crops to come in, the sheriff would then exercise these laws and go around and start rounding up all of these black folks with nowhere to be and put you back on the plantation you were supposed to be free from. And you back on the plantation working.
You mentioned, because I wanted to also touch on the point you did mention on the plantation, but is it correct that Africans were classed as 3/5 of a human being?
It's still the case.
That's still there today.
Yeah, that has not been changed in the Constitution. That's why I said people got to study it.
Wow.
We're classed as 3/5 of a human being. So tell me where the nigga don't come in that. You understand? And so people got to understand where this is all coming from. There's a deeper history to why people behave the way they behave. And some people may not understand the history, but it's the socialization dynamics that people have been subjected to that shapes the behavior, that shapes the perception, and that shapes what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So,
I mean, that's a very good point now, because obviously looking at the film again, and looking at the themes of the film, as you said, the polarization around the film, when did people move from that kind of public enemy consciousness and in the late 80s to be niggers with attitude? And breaking, you mentioned the construct of, if there's a construct there and it hasn't been changed, then we continue to be niggers. So that word nigger, how does that play out in terms of black liberation, black consciousness, and healing of the black family?
Well, what it is that everybody got to understand. The East Coast has a longer history in terms of its cities, in terms of the neighborhoods, in terms of its institutions. You're going out west. They called going out west the Wild West.
Oh yes, Wild West. Yeah.
And there was a reason why they called it the Wild West. Because in the West, blacks would kill white people, weren't afraid of white people, and they would kill them, and they would associate with the Native Americans and rise up against former slave owners and things like that.
The history wasn't there.
Yeah, because of the history.
Yeah.
So as people are living out here, people have an attitude that I'm not going to be controlled, that I'm not going to be told what to do, and I ain't got to do what you say is right. This is the West. This ain't the South. This is different over here. So don't come over with that Southern mentality, like boy and all that. Something happened to you.
Yeah.
And then people seem to want to forget that you had Bumpy Johnson in New York. They was running the numbers game. The numbers game was like the lottery today. It was considered illegal. It was considered in poor taste and all of those
nigger pennies, didn't they?
And nigger pennies. But this is what fed the black community. This is what fed them. So when you come out west now, the West has a whole nother history. We didn't have all of the institutions that they had in New York and places like that. And blacks who migrated eastward had money. They had access to horses and cars. The ones in the South had to wait until the Great Migration came. And when the Great Migration came, this was partly because of Depression, this was partly because of World War I, and they needed more black labor in Chicago and Los Angeles and all of those places. And as people started getting a chance to break out of the South and go to those places, just like many people found when they came to England for the first time, there was no housing. There was a whole lot of things.
No Irish, no blacks, no dogs were allowed.
Yeah, and there was a whole lot of things that was not available. So people adapt and people create.
So what you're saying, Twillight, is that you're setting a social context in which an NWA emerges.
Yeah, because in the community.
And it's not simply saying because they use the word nigger that we should just be dismissive of them and you're saying there's a context to why.
There's a context. And my thing is that what NWA did to the black middle class and the black comprador class. And the compradors are those who facilitate on behalf of the ruling class to maintain their power and maintain their institutions. What NWA did to them was held up a mirror and said, remember who you are and remember who you left behind. We are the children, we are the orphans and the bastard children of the civil rights movement.
The bastard of the party.
Not dog. See, this is a correction because the Panthers never left us. The Panthers were still in the community, underfunded, under-resourced.
But didn't they morph into the Crips and?
The Panthers were still there. The person who took me to get my first passport and started sending me to different parts of the world was my uncle, Michael Zinzin, rest in peace. But Michael got me my first passport. Michael told me to think globally and act locally. Michael gave me a foundation and understanding what community empowerment meant and cooperative economic zones, political organizing, and all of those things. And Michael was a Black Panther. He was still in the community. But I can't tell you what none of them civil rights law is. The NAACP building was closed in my community of Watts. They weren't there.
So you only saw people like your uncle who was actually in the community doing his work. But what about people who say someone like, say, Dre and Cube, they're middle class themselves, well-educated parents, that they kind of pimped that kind of ghetto life that Eazy-E probably really represented. They kind of, because they were a bit more thinking, more street, I mean not street, but they just kind of middle class blacks. And you seem to do have this kind of, probably enemy middle class blacks, well-educated blacks who see a potential in the more urban community, the ghettos, and kind of exploit it equally like the whites. Do you think that's a valid argument?
Well, what it is that you got areas of our community that holds more relevance in the minds of the day-to-day lives of black folks. If you live in Kent and you're hearing about something that's happening in Brixton or Peckham, or if you living in Inglewood or Compton back in the late 70s and the early 80s, and you hear about something happening in my community of Watts, that interests you. People talk about it. People make songs about it. And just like in the opening scene of the movie, when you see that tank-looking thing coming into the community that they call a battle ramp, and what it's doing, there was a song made about that. And these are all of the artists that preceded NWA. And these cats came from Compton. And Compton was one of the black middle-class communities, particularly West Compton. Because in West Compton, you had Dutones, the record company. And Dutones, the record company, they produced and they manufactured records for Red Fox. Now, everybody knows Red Fox.
Yeah.
Red Fox got some choice language.
Yeah, she was pretty hot.
But the thing is this. In 1955, 30 years before NWA, none of us were around. So how is it that we grow up using the same language that Red Fox was using? The language is in the community, man.
So all these words like calling women the B word,
and all of that
stuff,
all of that has
a H is a H,
all of that has a context to our reality.
So do you buy the argument when they say that they were just reflecting street life. Do you think that's a valid argument? So what they say is, okay, we're not the pimps, we're not the drug sellers, but we're going to highlight a life that exists, that white America or black middle class want to put under the rug, but we're saying, here it is, in your face, deal with it.
This is it. Dre even has a line in one of the raps where he says he don't smoke weed because it's known to give a brother brain damage. And then years later, he goes chronic on us. Yeah? So people got to remember these things, the history, and put it back into the context that it reflects. Don't forget, when you look at the stories of some of our greats, James Brown, his mother was a prostitute. He lived in a brothel. He brought the Johns to the house to engage in business. And the thing is this is a black boy raised by a black madam in a house where black women are selling their bodies. And then when you look at his behavior in terms of how he treats women in his life, his lack of trust and all of these different things, and when a woman dresses a certain way, he perceives in his mind she's trying to get some man's attention. All of that's a direct result of what he experienced as a child. But people want to say that the child is guilty. There's a scripture that says the parents ate sour grapes, which put their children's teeth on edge. Our parents were fed sour grapes from the moment they got off the ship. And then you want to ask us, why are we crazy?
Good point, good point. And bringing it up to there again, when you see a lot of incidents where blacks have died at the hands of the police in America, and it seems to be an epidemic. I mean, this just seems to be going out of hand. Do you think the film genuinely is highlighting the Black Lives Matter campaign and highlighting police brutality like the Panthers did? Do you think that's...
It's highlighting the ongoing struggle that we've had from when the officer was the overseer. Yeah? Because the officer ain't done nothing but replace the overseer. We still treat it the same way. And I know people say, well, you know, it ain't as bad as it was. Just because they improve the portrayal or the image or the aesthetics of how it comes across doesn't mean that the underlying psychological bedrock of what it is we're experiencing has changed. And so when NWA done that song, and I'm just going to say how they said, fuck the police, that was an anthem for the community because they was kicking our butts all the time. Yeah, I done been beat up by police, all my friends been beat up by police, and when the Rodney King situation happened, everybody said, finally somebody caught it on film. They got to believe us now. And then they turned around and didn't believe. And well, we saw what happened after that.
Okay, well, Twilight, I can't believe we've come to the end. It's gone so quick. We have to try and get you back on again because I think we've just scratching the surface of some. Because I know you wanted to talk about going back, maybe even back, you know, before prior slavery to our African roots and culture, and also looking at the dynamics between different cultural groups, like the African group and the European group, and maybe what dynamic that plays. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. But I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I know you're a busy man, and we really, really appreciate this. But please, we'd like to invite you back again, and maybe we get a bit more time to discuss matters a bit deeper.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Well, brothers and sisters, I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard and what you've seen. As again, this brother is a fountain of wisdom and knowledge, and we hope to get him back on again. But until we meet again, please stay safe. Please keep watching Islamic Action TV. Please subscribe to Islamic Action TV. Tell all your friends, your relatives, tell everybody, even Dylan the dog. Tell everybody about it. And inshallah, we'll see you again soon. So, as I greeted you in peace, my name is Mohammed Solomon, and I'm leaving you in peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa ta'ala wa barakatuh.